Hi guys, it's Steve from Disruptive Wealth Creation. Today we look at the 4-day April 2022 Bitcoin conference in Miami, where over 30,000 people attended, 400 companies took part, with 6,000 industrial leaders and over 80 different speakers attending. Watch this space and find out what the takeaways are. Day one was Industry Day, designed for people interested in being part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, with over 400 companies there and over 6,000 business leaders flush with money and looking for talent. Not necessarily the developer or the person with tech experience of coding, but people with new and bright ideas and wanting to change the world. A great place to leave the old world behind and join a new dynamic future. An exciting place, seeing companies showing off their new products and making big announcements. The second and third day were all about the 80 plus guest speakers and what they had to say. Here are a few examples, starting with Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy.
I just think we've made enormous progress. 18 months ago, MicroStrategy bought $250 million of Bitcoin. You know, and everybody said, well, you bought it, you're not gonna buy any more, and when are you gonna sell it? You know, and then it promptly traded down, and we were down $50 million, and people were dancing on my grave, gleefully speculating about when the board of directors were gonna fire me. And then we finished a Dutch auction, and we bought 175 million more, and I thought, well, I got it 20% cheaper, why wouldn't I? And then people thought, well, you're going to stop. And then we didn't stop. And then Square, now Block, bought Bitcoin. And then Tesla bought Bitcoin. And we bought more Bitcoin. We're up to 6 billion Bitcoin. By the way, if you want to turn 250 million into 6 billion, buy Bitcoin. Don't buy gold. If I bought gold, I would have had $250 million worth of gold instead of $6 billion worth of Bitcoin. 24 months ago, I went to Merrill Lynch and I said, I want to buy Bitcoin. They laughed at me and said, not only will I not sell it to you, we're not allowed to talk about it or we get fired. Like, okay, well, then I wired like $175 million out of that bank and I went somewhere else. And you know, I think the victory lap here is now my inbox has Bitcoin research from Merrill Lynch sent to me by the same broker. Like, we're covering it now. This is what we think.
Now let's listen to what Cathie Wood from ARK Invest has got to say about Bitcoin.
We see institutional investors, all we expect over the next 8 years is that 2.5%, roughly 2.5% of assets, institutional assets, are allocated to Bitcoin. So we don't need a lot. And if it's more than that, and that's how institutional investors work, they tiptoe in. In the 70s, it was real estate. In the 80s, it was emerging markets, 80s and 90s. And now I think it's going to be crypto starting with Bitcoin. And that's very important, starting with Bitcoin.
So what else is new that came out of the Bitcoin conference? Well, the good news is that more stores, restaurants and online businesses are now able to accept Bitcoin. One big example of this is Shopify. With shops, it means that they can move away from the 3% processing fee that Visa and MasterCard charge and accept the Bitcoin on the Strike Lightning network, which charges a negligible fee. This gives shops and other online businesses the ability to make more profit, or at least give them a better chance of surviving these difficult economic times and stay afloat. For the consumer, the good news about using Bitcoin is that when you purchase items from places like Amazon, you don't have to give them your name and address. And also, they won't be able to track what items you like or don't like to buy. So if we compare the last 12 months, what's changed with Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is working towards a more circular economy where you can earn Bitcoin, get paid in Bitcoin, and you can spend or save Bitcoin. Long term, with inflation and other monetary issues, people are looking for new places to put their money other than the S&P 500, and Bitcoin is it. It is heading long term towards becoming probably the next global reserve currency. Kevin O'Leary, a Canadian businessman known as Mr. Wonderful from the popular TV series Shark Tank, stated that with some regulation, Bitcoin could become the 12th sector in the S&P 500. A lot of Bitcoiners can see Bitcoin working in parity with equities. US politicians are slowly starting to see the benefits of Bitcoin as other countries strive to be the next capital of Bitcoin. Senator CYNTHIA LUMMIS from Wyoming is working with Bitcoiners to provide educated legislation with clarity on Bitcoin. Despite Donald J. Trump once saying that Bitcoin is a scam, we are starting to see bipartisan support for Bitcoin. Even GENSLER has stated that Bitcoin is not a security as he goes hunting for other cryptocurrencies. So, what about El Salvador and President Bukele? Well, unfortunately, due to some civil unrest in his country, he was not able to attend the conference. But the good news is that El Salvador's GDP has gone up from 2% to 10%. The reasons for that are that since El Salvador became the capital of Bitcoin, tourism has snowballed and there's a lot of money being generated in the economy as more businesses set up in El Salvador and more people buy properties using Bitcoin so they do not have to pay any tax. So, since then, has anyone else decided to make Bitcoin their official currency? Well, the answer is yes. Firstly, there is a small Honduran island of Prospera. And then secondly, there is Madeira, an autonomous region of Portugal. Both have adopted Bitcoin as their national legal tender this year. So lastly, let's have a look at what is holding up Bitcoin from going to the moon, and then finally end on a positive note. Well, Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, blames it on the gerontocracy. These are the people who pretend to make investment complicated. Many of them are old, and unfortunately many of them are the decision makers. So let's end on a positive note. Hear from Michael Saylor again from MicroStrategy, and then end with my brother's daughter, Ava, who is 10 years old, and see what she thinks about Bitcoin. Thank you, and see you in the next one.
We got to wrap it up here, but I leave you with two thoughts. One, whenever I meet with very powerful people, politicians, senators, Congress persons, governors, or whenever I meet with billionaires or CEOs, normally what they say to me is, my daughter or my son said you're a rock star and I have to meet you. Okay? And they're like, I had a guy come to my house. I met his son, and the next day the son brought his father, and his father could buy the entire city of Miami. And he said, well, I don't know what's going on, but I know Bitcoin is really important, and my son says I got to sit down and listen. And so I orange pilled him for 2 hours. And I'm not going to say who, because it's such a common story, but my point here is, every one of you knows someone. Go tell a CEO, go tell your father, go tell your mother, go tell somebody that Bitcoin's going to change the world and they should figure out more about it, because the number one thing you can do is educate the world on Bitcoin and let people know they need to figure out Bitcoin. And every one of you does make a difference, because I would never get those meetings if it wasn't like someone that went and said, you got to pay attention. And my last point to you, you do not sell your Bitcoin. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ava. I'm 10 years old. My uncle Steve asked me, do I know what Bitcoin is? Well, it's a type of money. and the sign looks like a bee.